Welcome back, folks. Episode 3 of the True Money Podcast. In this one, we'll get closer to answering the questions that we set out at the start of the series. Is Bitcoin money? Is Bitcoin digital gold? And is Bitcoin a store of value? So, of course, in order to answer that question properly, we have to define money. We spent some time in episode 1 looking at what Bitcoin is objectively, system design, etc. Episode 2, we started looking at money. We had a look at fiat currency because, of course, Bitcoiners would suggest that Bitcoin is a solution to the fiat problem. So we looked at fiat currency in episode 2. In this one, we'll look into the wider question of what is money. You can see on screen, and I'll not bore you with this stuff because I'm sure most people that are watching this video are aware of the properties of money and the functions of money. Bitcoiners in particular make a lot of the fact that Bitcoin meets the properties of good money, and that's not really in dispute. And these properties of good money aren't in dispute. It's well settled, durability, portability, limited supply, etc. These are properties of a good money, and it would appear on the surface of it that Bitcoin satisfies the properties of good money. But there are issues that appear when we start to look at the core functions of money and the overarching purpose of money, which you can see right at the bottom of the screen. This definition's come from Claude AI, by the way, and you can see it at the bottom of the screen. This is essentially the purpose of money: to enable complex economic activity by facilitating exchange, measurement, and storage of economic value. So the functions, of course, play a part in arriving at the purpose of money. If a good or proposed money satisfies the properties, satisfies the core functions, there's a very good chance that it's going to satisfy that overarching purpose. Let's have a quick look at these core functions. Primary function being the medium of exchange, defined as providing a universally accepted method of payment. So that's an interesting word, universally. Quite often it's just described as being the generally accepted medium of exchange because universal is very wide. General can be more local. Unit of account. Well, this implies stability, because if you're using a common measure of value, and money is the yardstick by which all goods and services are to be measured. If you are going to settle on a common measurement which allows you to compare, then that unit of account must be stable in and of itself, over time periods as well. Then we have store of value, of course, and this is of course one of the major claims of Bitcoin, that it is a store of value, and it satisfies that money property. How it's defined here by the AI: money can be saved and retrieved in the future with reasonable stability and purchasing power. So that's very, very important for our analysis, and that's important to remember. Reasonable stability and purchasing power, allowing wealth to be preserved over time. In other words, it maintains purchasing power over time. And then we have here point 4, standard of deferred payment. Not sure how different this one is to point 2. Enables loans and credit transactions, for providing a stable unit for future obligations. To me, 1, 2 and 3 are the classical defined functions of money, aren't really in dispute. Not sure the value of adding a 4th one on here from the AI. It seems to be covered by point 2, unit of account. So as we go through this video, we will look at how money has been defined in the book by Safety and Amos, the Bitcoin Standard, which has been utilised to a great extent to promote Bitcoin. So we'll have a look at how Safety approaches these core functions of money and builds a case that Bitcoins can satisfy them. Before we dive into looking at the Bitcoin Standard definition of money, Just thought it would be interesting to share on the back of the definition that we just looked at. I asked the Claude AI to comment on what we discussed in episode 2, that fiat currency is not money because it cannot provide a long-term store of value function. Just thought it would be interesting to see what the AI had to say about it. I wasn't surprised at all with the response, because of course they're programmed not to admit that fiat currency isn't money. They're going to use extremes of logic to arrive at the fact that fiat currency is money, and they will maybe admit here that it's potentially a poor money. How they've articulated here is it's reasonable to view the store of value function on a spectrum. Sorry, I'm not going to read out this whole thing. I'm jumping to the bottom. The AI concludes it's reasonable to view the store of value function on a spectrum rather than binary terms. Fiat currencies serve other functions of money better while providing moderate value storage over shorter periods. I mean, very diplomatic, isn't it? And I think what I found with these AIs, if you press them hard enough on a particular point and you provide evidence to them, they will concede the point to you in your chat, but they will not take that away as learning. So these AIs have not got to the stage yet where they can aggregate responses from everyone interacting with them, which of course would be the next development stage for AI, to actually learn from people that it's communicating with. But they're not programmed to do that. It will totally forget any of the arguments that you provide to it, and it won't override or feed back into its core learning. Just thought it would be interesting to share this, given what we discussed in the previous episode. We'll move on now and have a look at the Bitcoin Standard definition of money. So before we start looking at some examples from the Bitcoin Standard, it's important to understand how fundamental to Bitcoin the claim that it is money is. Really everything is built around that claim that Bitcoin is decentralized money. The Bitcoin Standard book, called the secondary strapline of it is a decentralized alternative to central banking, with conclusions throughout the book that Bitcoin can essentially become the base layer money of the world. We'll look at that claim in detail later, but really the claim that Bitcoin is money is central to the claims that it's digital gold and it's a store of value, to the extent that it has a $2 trillion market cap today, which is quite astounding, really. So Bitcoiners tend to approach this topic with a very wide definition of money, often incorrect, and often conflating money with medium of exchange. Whereas we discussed in a previous video, medium of exchange can be absolutely anything, but money has to serve the purpose of an overarching economy. Most Bitcoiners tend to look at money through a very personalised individual lens of, if I can send it to my friend, or if I can buy anything with it at all, then it is money. And that's not the case. The first example we'll look at from the Bitcoin Standard takes this approach. And Safedin here zooms right into an individual level, any person choosing to purchase something, not for its own sake, but with the aim of exchanging it for something else, is making it de facto money. Now, there's no weight of economic theory as evidence for this statement, that nobody defines money in this way. Any person choosing to make something money, they have the right to do that. That is not the case. Now, anybody can choose an item and use it as a medium of exchange, but that doesn't mean that it's a good money. It doesn't mean that it has the properties of money, for example. Using this as an example, if I want to purchase something from my friend, I think that I have a better chance of purchasing the item because my friend likes cheese sandwiches, I can go to the store, buy a cheese sandwich, bring the cheese sandwich to my friend, and then use it as in exchange for whatever good or service it was that I wanted to buy. Therefore, the cheese sandwich is money, according to Safeteen's very, very wide definition, which is nonsense, of course. As we read through this, we see that he refers to some of the commodity monies that have been used over time that served a money function for much smaller non-developed societies, and he refers to alcohol and cigarettes here in certain conditions. So that's a good example as well, because of course alcohol and cigarettes are potentially used, to use common parlance, as money in prison, but really they're not money. They're used as a medium of exchange in prison. Money is much wider. Medium of exchange is a subset, and that's fine, because that, it's only utilised, alcohol and cigarettes are only utilised to get a favour or get some other good that's needed at that time. So Safety finishes this here. This is in chapter 1, so he's setting the stage. Very, very wide definition of money. Basically anything that an individual chooses it to be. That's clearly not the case. Another example from chapter 1, after casting that very wide net in terms of the definition of money, he's highlighted here Karl Menger's statement around saleability. Now, much is made in the Bitcoin Standard Book around this saleability, which means the ease at which a good can be sold on the market. Maybe I'll get into that in a later video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a full review, or actually just look through the Bitcoin Standard, and we can pick out some parts of it that are highly questionable. For this video, we just need to understand some of the key areas of mistake, of misrepresentation around the definition of money. So saleability here, the ease with which a good can be sold on the market whenever its holder desires. Karl Menger wrote about this in the late 19th century. So what was meant by selling a good on the market was actually a physical marketplace. This does not mean trading Bitcoin on an exchange. This means, can you take your Bitcoin to a store, either a local store or an online store, and purchase other goods and services with it? Of course, you can trade all types of commodities on an exchange, right? The futures exchange has got all types of commodities that you can buy or sell. Wheat being an example, but you can't take wheat to your local shop and use it as money. This is a mistake that a lot of Bitcoiners make. They confuse the fact that it's traded on an exchange, some fairly questionable exchanges, I would add, in terms of transparency of who's trading on those exchanges, but we'll come back to that in another video. The point here being that the most saleable good is, can you buy things with it? Is it generally accepted as a medium of exchange? In chapter 4 of the Bitcoin Standard, I've highlighted this section where he says, in its infancy, Bitcoin already appears to satisfy all the requirements of Menger, Mises and Hayek. So this is one of the in my opinion, purposes of the Bitcoin Standard book. The whole book is designed to provide scholarly credence to the claim that Bitcoin is money. What we've seen in the previous example is a very wide definition of money. A definition through the lens of an individual that is never used anywhere else and has absolutely no economic theory supporting it. Then we have this egregious claim, really, that Bitcoin satisfies the requirements of Menger, Mises and Hayek, who, if you don't know, these are the godfathers of the Austrian school of economics. And the Austrian school is known as the economics of liberty. They are proponents of sound money, primarily the gold standard, which of course was the premier money before government started to meddle in that 100 years ago or so. And this quote that we have on screen is from Friedrich Hayek, and Bitcoiners point towards this all the time, as evidence that Bitcoin is money. So we'll just read it out and then we'll discuss what it means. I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. That is, we can't take it violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is by some sly, roundabout way introduce something that they can't stop. So of course Bitcoiners claim that government can't stop Bitcoin, therefore Bitcoin satisfies Hayek's requirement to take money out of the hands of government. So there's some circular logic in that statement. First of all, it's built around an assumption, and we'll cover this in great detail in a later video around the question, can government stop Bitcoin? Bitcoiners say that they can't, and therefore Hayek somehow predicted that there would be a money that's taken out of the hands of government. I would say that this is somewhat wistful comments from Hayek. Frustrated with government meddling in the money supply. It would have been better to just have precious metals as money with much smaller government. And that is the whole ethos of the Austrian school: smaller government, less government meddling. But just because Hayek has made this comment around taking money out of the hands of government, that does not mean that he predicted Bitcoin or in any way supports Bitcoin. We will need to look at Hayek's work in a little bit more detail to ascertain if this is an accurate statement here from Safedin. I suspect that Safedin knows that 99% of folks are not going to check him up here on this claim, but I'm certainly going to do that. Let's have a look at it. Okay, we'll look now at Friedrich Hayek, famous economist. You can see on screen, just a quick Google search will bring you up a number of books that he's written, and a very short biography here. Of course, you can look into this in more detail yourself. For our purposes, we just want to have a quick look at Friedrich Hayek, who he was, before we look at some of his writing to investigate the claim made by Safedin Amos that Bitcoin satisfies Hayek's requirements for a good money. So, who was he? Known for his contributions to economics, particularly his work on the price system, the role of knowledge in economic decision making, and a critique of socialism. You can see here he won the 1974 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for his work on the theory of money and economic fluctuations, areas of expertise, price system, and market coordination. So this is all important before we, of course, go and look at his writing. What we'll look at in the next couple of slides is some extracts from this book, the Denationalization of Money, 1976. He must have been working on that in and around the time that he won the Nobel Prize. So what we have on screen is an extract from chapter 14 of Hayek's book, The Denationalization of Money. These are tough books to read, these economic texts. I can't think that anyone would go and read them for fun. But I've done the hard work for you. The purpose, of course, is to just lift up the lid, have a look at the claim that Safedin made in his book, that Bitcoin satisfies the Austrian School of Economics as regards to sound money. If you remember, he said that it satisfies Hayek, Menger, and Mises. So let's have a look at it. A stable price level and a high and stable level of employment. So these are normally the goals of a central bank, to keep prices and employment, prices stable and employment high. And Hayek says that this does not require or permit the total quantity of money to be kept constant or to change at a constant rate. So that's an interesting statement there as it pertains to Bitcoin, because of course, as we all know, the whole selling point of Bitcoin is that there is a hard cap on the supply of the money units, let's call it, or the bitcoins. Of course, Bitcoiners claim that these Bitcoin ledger entries are money units. But Hayek, I would say that that a stable price level does not permit the total quantity of money to be kept constant or to change at a constant rate. And that's important as well, because of course Bitcoin has a rigid issuance schedule, fully planned out in advance. Let's read on. Keeping the quantity of money constant does not assure that the money stream will remain constant. Well, what does he mean by that? Of course, it's obvious what is meant by keeping the quantity of money constant, but when he talks about the money stream, that would be referred to by economists from the school of Milton Friedman and Irving Fisher, the monetarists, as velocity of money. So when Hayek talks about the money stream here being constant, he's referring to the circulation of money through the economy, the velocity of money. So let's read again from the start of this sentence. Keeping the quantity of money constant does not assure that the money stream will remain constant. In order to make the volume of the money stream behave in a desired manner, what he means by that is, the velocity of money in an economy. If it is too hot, then you will experience price inflation. If the velocity is too low, then that would be deflationary. Prices would drop and production would fall also. So that's what he meant by the volume of the money stream, making it behave in a desired manner. And here's the crucial point. The supply of money must possess considerable elasticity. Now, it cannot be understated how important this is, because the Bitcoin and Bitcoiners' whole narrative is based around the fact that Satoshi has invented the hardest money of all time, the most perfect money of all time. Yet we have a Nobel Prize winning economist stating very, very clearly that the supply of money must possess considerable elasticity. Now, that doesn't mean that it should be centrally planned, of course, because the Austrian school argued against centrally planned central bank issued money, and the whole thrust of this book in particular, the denationalisation of money, is against central planning. What I will say quickly, and we'll look at this in detail in the next video, is that the precious metals as money had a natural elasticity of supply. You couldn't just hold gold and expect to increase your purchasing power, i.e. get richer by holding gold in your house for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The purchasing power of gold remained constant over hundreds if not thousands of years, and the reason why that is the case is that there was a natural elasticity. If everyone decided to hoard their gold, then more human efforts and more efforts would be directed towards mining more gold, so the supply would increase as the purchasing power of gold increased. That is a natural elasticity, natural balancing of the purchasing power of the money, which is completely missing in Bitcoin. So this statement from Hayek, the supply of money must possess considerable elasticity. So the red flag should be appearing here already, folks. We've only just lifted up the lid to look at if there's any economic theory evidence to support a fixed limit money such as Bitcoin. And spoiler alert, folks, there's nothing out there whatsoever that would support it. None of the economic schools would be in support of a fixed limit money. It is, for all intents and purposes, impossible, and we will look at that in detail in the next video. For now, it's enough to highlight the importance of this statement from Hayek. Because if you're a Bitcoiner and you believe the narrative that's propagated over the last 10-15 years, that Satoshi, the unknown, mysterious computer programmer, was able to design a perfect money, and that he knows more about this than Friedrich Hayek, well, I've got a bridge that I can sell you over here if you believe that. So Hayek goes on to say here, no authority can beforehand ascertain, only the market can discover the optimal quantity of money. So that's another kick in the teeth for Satoshi, who decided that he could ascertain the optimal quantity of money. I don't think he put any thought into it whatsoever. As I covered in episode 1, he hasn't really understood the money problem at all. He's looked at a fiat currency problem, and of course anyone can recognise that there's a problem of decreasing purchasing power or inflation of that's created by the money supply ever expanding over time. And he simply said, well, the opposite of that must be better. And he hasn't really understood that that's not the case. Let's read on. So this last part here again refers to this fixed limit of money. It relates to cash in circulation approaching the upper limit, and this was around a debate around a potential legal limit on money issuance. For example, bank created credit. It's important here. Hayek says, I would not like to see what would happen if under such a provision it became known that the money supply was approaching the upper limit, and therefore a need for increased liquidity, further money could not be met. So he refers here to footnote 1, and we'll have a quick look at that now. And that footnote 1 says, he refers to a classic account of Walter Bagehot. In a sensitive state of the English money market, the near approach to the legal limit. And again, this would be a money of a fixed limit, would be a sure incentive to panic. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you have a fixed limit money and you're approaching that limit of issuance where there's not going to be any more money issued ever again, well, people are going to panic. The economy isn't going to go function as normal. And this is what amazes me around the Bitcoin maxi argument. I mean, these guys have not thought their argument through whatsoever. You have these guys like Max Kaiser and other prominent Bitcoin maxis with straplines such as everything goes to zero against Bitcoin, which is utterly bizarre, because that means complete economic collapse. Everything goes to zero. These guys think that they're going to get rich holding their Bitcoin, and the governments will, and they think the government, central banks and other authorities are going to allow this to happen, which they won't. They think they can hold Bitcoin and get rich forever. That's not going to happen, folks. That's not going to be allowed, and we'll deconstruct the reasons why in this series of videos coming up for you. But here we go here. Hayek says, with a fixed limit money, it would create a panic. He's absolutely right, of course. And with a pre-planned fixed limit money where everyone knows what the limit is, well, the hoarding's going to start from day one. And when money's hoarded, the velocity of money collapses towards zero. It essentially ceases to become money because it won't flow through the economy. Prices and production will collapse as well, and we'll look at that in much more detail in the next video in the series. The last comment from Hayek that we'll look at, this is a lot of writing on screen, don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole thing out. This is from the same book, The Denationalisation of Money. This is from chapter 18, and I included the whole section because it was a debate about the abolition of central banks. And of course the Austrians would advocate that there was no need for central banks, and that central banking leads to bad results in the long term. But the important statements here to look at, and these just reinforce Hayek's previous comments around elasticity. He says it might still be argued that central banks are necessary to secure the required elasticity of the circulation. So that is the comments from the Keynesian school, of course. Hayek says, although this expression has in the past been abused to disguise inflationist demands, we must not overlook its valid kernel. So again, he's reinforcing his previous statement that the money supply must be elastic. He goes on to say, the manner in which elasticity of supply, stability of value of money can be reconciled is a genuine problem. It will only be resolved if the issuer is aware that his business depends on regulating the quantity of his currency so that the value of its unit remains stable. And this is a topic that we will cover as we progress through this video and the next one in relation to stability of purchasing power. It is so important, and it's what allows money to be both a medium of exchange and a store of value. It must have that balance where the purchasing power remains stable. Now, of course, Bitcoin's purchasing power is anything but stable. It has increased massively over time, and Saifedean in his book, he's written a full book about Bitcoin, and I think there's one sentence in the whole book which just says, it'll stabilize in the future. Well, it won't stabilize in the future because of the fixed limit, and we'll look at some mathematical evidence around that in the next video. But this is the key here: the value of its unit, the purchasing power of the money, must remain stable. He goes on to say, what makes a currency a universally acceptable, that is really liquid asset, i.e. money, the generally accepted medium of exchange, will be precisely that it is preferred to other assets because its buying power, its purchasing power is expected to remain constant. Again, we'll cover this in great detail in the next video, but the expectations of purchasing power drives the behaviour of all participants in the economy, and that's producers and consumers. So if there's an expectation for either increases, massive increases in the case of Bitcoin, or decreases in purchasing power, as in the case of fiat currency, well, that's going to drive different behaviour across the economy and can drive very, very undesirable behaviour, and we'll look at that in detail in the next video. But that's it from Hayek. I think as we've looked at these comments from Hayek, and this is only in one of his books, and I'm sure that you can look through any of his books if you really wanted to do so and find similar commentary. But this should be a red flag, folks, in relation to Hayek's comments around elasticity of the money supply, plus the fact that Saifedean in his book declares that Bitcoin satisfies Hayek, which we've seen here it clearly doesn't. So there's another red flag as well. Saifedean's book is great propaganda, but whenever you lift up the lid and start looking into some of these claims, well, it starts to unravel.